Hello, how are you? I hope you are faring on well. It's my pleasure that you have joined me for today's lesson. We have a lesson from 2 history and government lesson. We are studying the social, economic and political organization of African societies, and in the lessons that have passed, we started learning about the organization of the Baganda Kingdom or the Baganda society, and we have learned how they were organized socially. We have also learned how they were politically structured, who were their leaders, what were their duties, and before that we looked at how they originated, how they settled, and how they organized and became a kingdom. Now, in our today's lesson, as we end the subtopic or the study of the Baganda community, we are going to study about the economic organization. The economic organization of the Buganda or the Baganda Kingdom, and then towards the end we shall look at the factors that led to the decline of the Baganda Kingdom. So my dear learner, in our today's lesson, we are going to understand, or we are going to interrogate, what were the economic activities of the Baganda Kingdom. What were they doing on their day-to-day lives to make sure that their lives was going on well? What were the economic practices? How were they sustaining their lives? That is what we are going to study in our today's lesson. So, in the societies that we live in, what are some of the different activities that people engage themselves in so that they can have a comfortable life, so that they could be able to have food, so that they could be able to have a shelter, so that they could be able to be safe or maintain their lives? What are some of these activities that people do? You can discuss with the person you are watching with. You can tell your parents what are some of these activities people engage in. They are employed. That is today, they are employed. People engage in businesses. Very good. People engage in farming. Very good. Others keep livestock. Very good. Others offer services, right? For example, you have people who clean other people's houses. You call them house helps. Very good. That is the work they do to maintain their own livelihood. So there are different activities in the community that people engage themselves in to make sure that they are able, or their life is comfortable. So in our lesson today, we are going to answer the question, what were the economic activities that the Baganda people engaged themselves in to maintain their lives? So the first one that we are going to learn, or we are going to look at, is trading. Trading was one of their economic activities. The Baganda people, most of them were traders. So they were trading among themselves. They were trading among themselves, one person to the other, at the community level. They exchanged goods. If one was producing, say for example, cassava, and the other one was producing milk, they would exchange or they would trade off their activity. So that was happening among the communities. They were also trading with neighbors or neighboring communities. Neighboring communities. Those people that were neighboring, that were near their borders. So they traded with them. The goods they produced in their community, they would trade them off with other communities. They also engaged in long distance trade. This was with the Swahili of the coast and the Arabs. So these enabled them to get or acquire goods from outside the continent. Remember, the long distance trade engaged the Arabs and the Swahilis. The Swahili were the people who were living at the coast. So it led to introduction of new goods. For example, guns, was one of them. There was glassware and clothing that was introduced. Initially, it was not in the kingdom, but now because of the long distance trade, they were able to acquire these new goods. So the first economic activity of the Baganda was trading. The second one was farming. They were farmers. The Baganda Kingdom had constant rainfall. So it was well watered and it was also very fertile. So they engaged in farming. Their staple food was bananas, what we refer to as matoke. That was their staple food. Apart from that, they also engaged in the planting of millet. We also had, apart from millet, we had sweet potatoes, right? That they produced. So they would get these goods, or they were producers of these goods. Apart from farming, they were also livestock keepers. They kept animals like goats, animals like cows, right? Animals like sheep. So they could get these animals for their hide. They kept them for their hide, for their meat, right? For their horns. These horns were used to make ornaments and other things. Yeah, they got hide from the cows and the goats. They got even the sheep, which was also used to make clothing, right, at that time. So the livestock was very important. So when you talk of trade, you'd find one family or a person who has hide would exchange that for bananas. So there was specialization. Different people specialized in different economic activities. The next economic activity was fishing. Those who are living along the Lake Victoria were engaged in fishing. They would go and catch fish in the lake. So that was another economic activity. So apart from Lake Victoria, Those who are living along rivers also engaged in fishing. This was also part of supplementing their diet. And also they engaged in traditional crafts, or what we refer to as domestic crafts. That is includes pottery. This is the making of pots. Pottery. They also were engaged in weaving. So along the rivers, you could find they would get things we call reeds. These reeds were used to make baskets. They were used to make nets that would be used in fishing, right? So that is weaving. So they would weave different things. They even had hats that were worn by the people. Pottery. Apart from pots, they would make utensils that were made of pot. For example, you could have a plate that is made of clay. So there were specialized people who made or who are specialized in making of these traditional crafts. They also made ornaments or beautification items. That is from the bones, from the pots. They could color them differently and make ornaments, which also they used to sell or exchange with other items. So that is about traditional crafts. Others were involved in iron working. They discovered the mining of iron and making iron implements. An example, they made hoes. These were used in farming. They also made knives. They also made arrows, which were used to protect themselves, or they were used by the army. So that was another economic activity, iron working. And as you learned in your topic on development of industry, there are different theories that explain, right? That explain the origin of iron working. So it is assumed that they discovered just a way of producing these iron implements that was very essential. So it became part of their lives. Also, there were others who specialized in boat making. They specialized in boat making. So they made boats and canoes that were used to travel across the Lake Victoria or along the rivers. So there are people who specialize themselves in making these boats and canoes that were very essential for people traveling across the Lake Victoria and even along the rivers. So it also emerged as a way of producing, or a way as an economic activity. And then lastly, my dear learner, they were hunters and gatherers. Hunters and gatherers. So they engaged in hunting and gathering. So they would go into the bushes. They would hunt for wild game, right? Wild game. So these included the antelopes, the rabbits in the bushes. So they would go and hunt for those wild game. They also gathered tubers and fruits from the bushes. So apart from engaging in farming and livestock keeping, they were also hunting and gathering to supplement what they were able to produce in their farm. So these are the economic activities, or this is how they were organized in their economy. There were those who are trading, and when you talk of trading, these trade activities were organized and were directed by Kabaka. We discussed that in during political organization. So Kabaka controlled all the trade activities. Farming, the farmers were they were also farmers. The peasant, or the people who we refer to as the Bakopi, would be able to keep one or two animals, but Kabaka with the chiefs had very large cattle or very large herds of livestock. And also farming, most of the peasants were farmers, and then they used the slaves also in their farming activities. They also engaged in fishing and making other crafts, and also iron working. So but towards the beginning of the 20th century, my dear Lana, towards the beginning of the towards the beginning or the start, towards the start, that would be the better word, towards the start of the 20th century, towards the start of the 20th century, the Baganda Kingdom or the Buganda Kingdom started to decline. It started to decline. Actually, it was not defeated, but its power and influence started to decrease. So let us look at the factors for the decline. Quickly, we look at the factors for the decline. There are only 5 of them. The factors that led to the decline of the Buganda, of the very strong. We have discovered that this was a very influential kingdom. But towards the start of the 20th century, the kingdom started to deteriorate in its power. So the first factor that contributed to its declining was Kabaka Mwanga. So at some point, the Kabaka Mutesa I, who oversaw the kingdom going to its highest level, had managed to make the kingdom very solid, but he was inherited, or Kabaka Mwanga took the reins after him. But he had weaknesses. Kabaka Mwanga had weaknesses. He would not be able to hold or continue to rule. He did not have the wisdom that his father had to continue having a very strong kingdom. So some of the chiefs, some of the Saza chiefs and the Gombolola chiefs started to rebel. He could not be able to hold them just like his father did. So here we saw that the Kabaka Mutesa I was very good at making sure that the Saza chiefs and the Gombolola chiefs had stayed in line, right? But now, when he was inherited by Kabaka Mwanga, he was unable to continue with the effective leadership of his father. Number 2, there were religious conflicts. In our last lesson, my dear learner, we discovered that towards the end of the 19th century, or the second half of the 19th century, there was introduction of new religions in Baganda Kingdom. What were these religions? We had Islam and Christianity. So there was a conflict, or a kind of a competition between the traditionalists, the Islams, and the Christians, the Muslims and the Christians. So they were competing against each other. Who was going to be stronger in the Kabaka's court, or the Kabaka's palace? So these brought conflicts and differences, which contributed to the decline of the kingdom. Number 3, the authority of Kabaka. The authority of Kabaka was undermined by Christians at the court, at the Kabaka's court or palace, right? So most of the people at the court had converted to Christianity, and in turn they were undermining the authority of Kabaka. So the officials conspired against the Kabaka. These led or contributed to the decline of the kingdom. So with the religious conflicts at some point, it went or it heightened, and there was a civil conflict, and Kabaka Mwanga was forced to flee away. And then while he was fleeing away, there was his son Daudi Chwa, right? Daudi Chwa took the reins. When Kabaka Mwanga was deported, actually he was deported to Kismayu. When he ran away, the reins or the leadership was taken by Daudi Chwa, who took the reins. He was just an infant. He was just a boy at the time when he was taking control. Remember, we said the leadership of Kabaka or the Kabaka office was hereditary. The eldest son was to take over the leadership after his father. So after Kabaka Mwanga was deported by the British through the Christians, so the infant Daudi Chwa took reins. He was unable to effectively control the affairs of the kingdom. So he had to leave the kingdom to other people who are the Katikiro, and the Katikiro among the other leaders or the other people who took the reins of leadership. So these affected how they would be able to hold together. Katikiro at that time was somebody known as Apollo Kagwa, right? Kagwa. So this man decided to work together with the British, right? So he kind of made agreements with the British. So that undermined or led to the decline of the kingdom. And then lastly, the signing of the Buganda Agreement. The signing of the Buganda Agreement of the 1900. So at the height of the Christian influx or the European people invading the land of Buganda, they had to make an agreement. The Buganda made an agreement with the British. So these ensured that Buganda had become a protectorate, or was now to be led by the government or by the nation of British. So this meant that the affairs would not go as they had been going on before. Now the British were the ones going to dictate. So here we see the influence of the British now took control of the land. The land was now owned and directed by the British. So these are some of the factors that led to the decline. Though it continued to exist, but the influence it had been reduced. They could not be able to continue with the power and the influence they had. So as we end our lesson today, I want you to attempt these questions that are going to help you look at what we have answered or what we have discussed in our lesson today. So some revision questions for you. Revision questions. And the first question is, explain Explain the economic organization of the Baganda. The Baganda in the pre-colonial period. So, and when we talk of the pre-colonial period, we are talking of the 19th century, before the coming of the Europeans or before them being colonized. Then, point number two, identify the factors that contributed to the decline of the Baganda Kingdom. Identify the factors that contributed to the decline of the Baganda Kingdom. And I'm sure, my dear learner, you are well able to answer and attempt those questions that we have just I've just mentioned. The first question: explain the economic organization of the Baganda in the pre-colonial period. And I've said the pre-colonial period is during the 19th century. That is just before the coming of the European powers. And then number two, identify the factors that contributed to the decline of the Baganda Kingdom. So with that, my dear learner, that marks the end of our lesson today. We have learned about the economic organization or the economic activities of the Baganda Kingdom. So in our next lesson, we shall continue looking at the other societies in Africa and how they were organized. Were they similar to the Baganda that we have been discussing, or different from the Baganda? Until that time, bye-bye.